Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. Last week we drafted the inside section of the Antique Garden Maze quilt, and now I wanted to focus a little bit on those borders. And they're a little bit problematic because they're all a little bit different sizes, but I suspect if the quilt maker had EQ, what she intended might have been just a little bit different, and I'm going to see if we can replicate her intentions within Electric Quilt. Okay, so we left off with the inside of the quilt, and now we're going to think about those points out borders which we added to the quilt but didn't quite get sized. So what I thought made sense is that if you look at this particular quilt and the inside of it, and I'm going to go to the layout, and it tells me that the size of the inside is 82 by 82. So for the borders, what I want to do is create a width of each of the borders that basically is equal to half of the distance. And that's going to make these 45-degree angles, which are going to be much easier to piece correctly and to replicate, I think, what the artist had in mind. So if I take the 82 divided by 6, that's 13.67. And if I take half of that, that's 6.75. So anyway, I'm going to go to the border tab. I currently have that set at 6 inches. I'm just going to click over a few times and bring that to 6.75. And because I had all turned on, when I clicked over on one, it changed all of them at the same time. Now, when I go to this tab here, and I'm going to use my paintbrush, if we zoom in, I'm going to just try to zoom in on the inspiration quilt. Can you see that they're using a stripe and a directional print in the borders, and they are trying to follow that around. And so interestingly enough, if you look at the corner, you've got basically two quarter square triangles coming together. So let me zoom out, and I did find a border print that I thought at least I could use for this, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in. I'm going to ignore the corners for a minute, but let me go ahead and put this in all of these other border pieces. And I think while I am at it, I'm going to also go ahead and put these pieces in. And I could use the control or the command and do them all at once. Now I'm going to leave the corners alone for a minute because I don't really want to put fabric in it, because I actually want to recreate what she's done in her upper left border here. But before I do that, let me see if we can fix the direction of the border. So I want them to flow very similarly. So I'm going to go ahead and use the rotate fabric button, and if it's not down at the bottom, if you just right click on your toolbar, select add remove buttons, and make sure rotate fabric is there. So I'm going to click on rotate fabric. Let me go ahead and do the advanced rotation. And for the first rotation, I'm just going to put 45 degrees, number of rotations 4. So let me now use my Alt key and click on this, and now you can see it's doing something similar to what's happened here. Now let me click on it. Again, still with my Alt key. An Alt key, or the Options key, basically will change all of one border at a time. So I'm going to do 2 more clicks, and that is going to now I'm sorry, I should have only done one click, and that's going to set that up correctly. Okay, so the next one, I got to look at how I want to do that. Again, I want to use the 45-degree angle, and I want them going basically downhill. And so again, with the Alt or Options key, click on it once, click on it again, and I think that meets that need. So for the bottom, let's see if I can get that direction. And that looks good. And the side, I'm going to say I'm going uphill. So, and that is just with the first click. Okay, so now I need to put in a block that is not a square or rectangle. Now, in order to do that, we're going to need to go to Patch Draw. So I'm going to set Work on Block. I'm going to do a block, New Block, and I'm going to do a Patch Draw block. And for this one, I could put in the exact size. In fact, maybe I will just do that. I'm going to put in 13.5 for the block width and 6.75 for the height. Now, I'm going to be on the Pieced tab for this. And I don't really care a lot about anything here. I just need to be able to find the midpoint. So I'm going to actually set my graph paper at 2 by 2. So I've set it at 2 by 2. That means that's the point I want to hit with my PolyDraw tool. So I'm going to click on it. Remember, it's a single click to start, single click up at the top, single click at the bottom, and then double click to finish. Now I have Hide, Show, Autofill, and Close Patches turned on, which means that this shades in when it's done. So I'm going to go to the Color tab. I'm going to go ahead and color that. There's no rotate feature in the Color tab, so I'm going to just add that to my sketchbook, and I will fix that once I'm back on Work on Quilt. So now I go back to Work on Quilt, and for this I need to go to Layer 2, and I'm going to select the Set Block, take this block, and I'm going to drag it onto the workspace. And again, we're on Layer 2, so we're on top of the rest of the quilt. Now I need to first of all rotate this first one 180 degrees. So I'm just going to use the rotate block, click on it twice, use the adjust tool, and I can bring this into position. To fine-tune the position, I can change the upper left coordinate in this section to say 6.75 times 6.75. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and use my copy and paste. And for this one, I'm just going to use the rotate button, because if I use the rotate block, let me just show you something. It rotates the block, but it doesn't change the size. So I'm going to go ahead and undo that, and instead, with my adjust tool and it's selected, I'm going to select rotate 90 degrees. Now it does this. Now I can use the rotate block 2 times, and it will be the right shape. And for this one, I'm going to just again move that to 0 and 6.75, and I'm just going to use the arrows to do that. Now I do need to carry the rotation, fabric rotation over, so if I use the rotate fabric, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple rotations here. And for this one, I think it's just a single rotation. And so you can see how those corners are now coming together, consistent with what is being planned. Now I am going to go ahead and use my adjust tool, and I'm going to take both of them and go ahead and copy and paste. And I'm not going to be able to rotate them as a unit, but let me just first of all move them over to this corner. And for this one, I can rotate it twice, right? And actually the top one I don't need to rotate. I'm going to use the adjust tool, move them both roughly into position, right? And then I'm going to check my corner here, and let's see what works, right? So 6.75, and it looks like 75.25. And now for this one, I want to get that to this 6.75 as well, and 88.75. And again, I'm going to use my rotate fabric. Click on that twice, and click on that twice. Consistent, and if I want, I can use fussy cut and get really fancy and bring those pieces together. Okay, and now I'm just going to repeat that for the remaining two corners. So once I've got that done, I'm going to add it to the sketchbook, and I'm going to go ahead and right click and delete outline patches and delete outline blocks. And that is going to give me a better feel for whether this looks consistent with my my photo on the right. So anyway, I think this is looking good, and hopefully now you've got some ideas of how to deal with borders when there isn't one that exactly matches what you want to do. Thanks so much for watching. For additional tips and techniques, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter at www.onpointquilter.com.